She stood at the edge of platform 7, digging through her coat pocket for the third time like somehow the answer would be different. It wasn't. One crumpled $10 bill. That was it. That was everything she had until Friday. Maya pulled her coat tighter and stared down the dark tunnel where the 642 was supposed to appear any minute now. She was exhausted in that deep, bone-level way that doesn't come from one bad night but from months of them strung together. Rent was late. Again. Her second job had cut her hours. And tonight, she'd skipped dinner so her daughter could eat the last of the pasta. The station was almost empty at this hour. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant echo of someone's shoes on concrete, and the cold air that never quite left these underground places no matter what season it was above ground. That's when she noticed him. He was sitting on the far end of the bench near the vending machine, an older man, maybe late 60s, dressed in a plain grey jacket that had seen better days. He had a small paper bag beside him and his hands were folded in his lap, but what caught Maya's attention was his face. He wasn't looking at his phone or staring at the departure board. He was just sitting there, very still, with the kind of look that meant something had gone wrong tonight and he hadn't finished processing it yet. She almost kept walking. Almost. But then she saw him reach into his pocket, check it, and come up empty. He looked at the vending machine. Looked away. Then back again, like he was negotiating with himself. Maya walked over. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" He looked up, a little startled. "Oh, yes. I'm fine, thank you." His voice had a slight accent she couldn't place. Eastern European maybe. His eyes were kind but tired. "I couldn't help noticing," she said carefully, not wanting to embarrass him. "Did you need something from the machine? Water or something?" He shook his head with a small, polite smile. I left my wallet at the office. I'll be fine." Maya looked at him for a second. She looked down at her 10. She thought about Friday, about the pasta, about the math that never quite worked out no matter how many times she ran it. Then she held the bill out to him. "Take it," she said. He blinked. "I can't take your money." "It's $10. Get yourself something to eat and take the train home." "Young lady." "Please," she said, and her voice came out softer than she intended. "I know what it looks like when someone needs a little help and won't ask for it. I've been that person more times than I can count. Just take it." He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face that she couldn't name. Then slowly, he reached out and took the bill. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have no idea." He stopped. Cleared his throat. "Thank you." "Don't mention it," Maya said, and she meant it in the most literal way possible. She sat down on the other end of the bench to wait for her train. They didn't talk much after that. He bought a bottle of water and a pack of crackers from the machine and ate them slowly. She watched the tunnel. The train came. They rode in the same car but sat at opposite ends, and when she got off at a stop, she gave him a small wave and he nodded back. She walked home in the dark, $10 later, already recalculating Friday in her head. She didn't think about it again. It was just something she did. 3 weeks later, Maya was called into her manager's office at the hotel where she worked the front desk. Her stomach dropped the way it always did in those moments because nothing good ever started with "Can I see you for a minute?" But her manager looked strange. Not angry. Almost confused. "Did you work the front desk on the 15th? He asked. "Yes," she said. "Do you remember checking in a guest named Mr. Harlan Ives?" She thought about it. The 15th had been a busy night. "I'm not sure. Maybe." Her manager turned his computer screen toward her. There was an email. A formal, well-written email from someone at a company she'd never heard of, but the letterhead looked serious. She skimmed it. The words guest experience and exceptional kindness appeared in the first paragraph. The words significant investment and partnership opportunity appeared in the third. Then, near the bottom, a line that made her read the whole thing twice. "Mr. Ives has specifically requested to speak with the employee who assisted him that evening and, separately, has expressed interest in providing a personal gift of gratitude in recognition of a kindness extended to him recently at a train station." Maya looked up from the screen. "Train station," her manager said, eyebrows raised. She sat down without being asked. The meeting with Harlan Ives happened 4 days later, in a conference room that probably cost more per hour than she made in a week. He walked in wearing a suit that fit the way expensive things fit, perfectly and without trying, and when he saw her, he stopped. "It's you," he said. "It's me," she said. He sat across from her and folded his hands on the table, just like he had on that bench, and he told her the story from his side. He'd had a rough night. A board meeting that had gone sideways, an argument with someone he trusted, and he'd left the building so rattled he'd walked out without his wallet or his phone. He'd ended up at the station not entirely sure how he'd gotten there, sitting on that bench, feeling for the first time in a long time completely and utterly alone. "I have more money than I will ever be able to spend," he said plainly. "And that night, I needed $10 and I didn't have it, and I couldn't even bring myself to ask." He paused. "You didn't wait for me to ask." Maya didn't say anything. "I've been in business for 40 years, he continued. "I've met thousands of people. I can count on one hand the ones who acted the way you did that night without thinking twice about it." He looked at her directly. "So I'd like to ask you something, and I want you to take it seriously." She nodded. "What do you actually want to do with your life?" It was the question she hadn't let herself answer in years. She'd been so busy surviving that wanting something had started to feel like a luxury she couldn't afford. But sitting there in that room, with this man looking at her like her answer actually mattered, she told him the truth. She talked about the business she'd sketched out in notebooks at the kitchen table after her daughter went to sleep. A catering company, started small, built on the food her grandmother had taught her, the kind of cooking that made people feel like someone actually cared about feeding them. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Okay, let's make that happen." And he meant it. The paperwork arrived on a Tuesday, which felt almost too ordinary for what it represented. Maya sat at her kitchen table with a pen in her hand and a stack of documents in front of her that a lawyer had messengered over that morning, and she just stared at them for a long time before she could make herself sign anything. Her daughter Isla wandered in from the living room, 8 years old and already too observant for her own good. "Mama, why are you staring at paper?" "Because sometimes paper changes your life and you want to make sure you're ready." Isla looked at the stack, unimpressed, and went back to her cartoons. Maya signed. The seed money Harlan provided wasn't a handout. He was clear about that from the beginning, and she was grateful he was, because she wouldn't have taken it if it was. It was a formal investment, documented and structured, with a real agreement that gave her full ownership and control of her business. He wasn't buying a piece of her dream. He was betting on it. There was a difference, and he understood that she needed there to be. She named the company Sunday Table. It came to her at 2 in the morning, which was when most of her best ideas arrived because that was the only quiet hour she had. Sunday was the day her grandmother used to cook. The whole family would filter in through the back door of that small house in Richmond, drawn by the smell before they even knocked, and the table was always full before anyone thought to count how many chairs there were. Food just appeared. People just fit. That feeling, that specific feeling of being expected and welcomed and fed, was exactly what she wanted to sell. She started small. That was the plan, and she stuck to it even when impatience told her to move faster. She rented time in a commercial kitchen 3 nights a week and began building her menu, testing recipes, adjusting, starting over. She went back to her grandmother's handwritten index cards, the ones she'd kept in a showbox for years, and she treated them like sacred documents because they were. Her first client was a woman named Patricia who needed catering for her mother's 80th birthday party. 30 people in a backyard in Queens. Maya showed up with a team of 2, which was herself and her cousin Derek, who had agreed to help in exchange for a percentage she could actually pay him once things got moving. They served braised short ribs and buttermilk cornbread and a sweet potato dish with a brown sugar crust that made Patricia's mother close her eyes when she took the first bite. Patricia cried a little. Happy crying. The kind that comes when something tastes exactly the way a memory is supposed to. She posted about Sunday Table on 3 different Facebook groups before Maya had even finished packing up the van. The phone started ringing the next morning. It wasn't overnight success in the dramatic way people describe it later when the story sounds cleaner than it was. It was more like a door opening onto a long hallway with a lot of other doors. Each event led to another event. Each client knew someone who needed something. Maya learned quickly that in the catering business, the food was the product but the feeling was what people actually paid for, and she was very good at the feeling. She hired her first real employee in the 4th month. A young woman named Grace who had just finished culinary school and couldn't find a position anywhere that didn't want 5 years of experience she didn't have yet. Maya knew that particular trap. She hired her on a Friday and put her to work the following Monday, and within 6 weeks Grace had become indispensable. Harlan checked in occasionally but not intrusively. He'd send a short text every few weeks, sometimes just a single question. "How's it going?" She'd answer honestly, the good and the bad both, because she figured if he was going to be part of this, he deserved the real version. He never panicked when she described the hard parts. He'd ask a question or two and let her work it out, which was exactly the kind of support she hadn't known she needed until she had it. In month 7, a corporate client found her. A mid-sized tech company in Midtown that needed catering for a quarterly all-hands meeting and didn't want the usual rubber chicken situation. Maya put together a proposal that she worked on for 4 days straight, refining the menu and the presentation until it felt like something worth saying yes to. She got the contract. She did the event. 2 weeks later, they booked her for the rest of the year. That was the moment she knew Sunday Table was real. Not hopeful. Not promising. Real. She moved into a bigger commercial kitchen space. She bought a second van. She brought Derek on full-time and stopped calling it a favor. She hired 2 more people, both of them women who reminded her a little of herself, capable and underestimated and ready to work if someone would just give them the room to do it. She didn't forget where the money had come from, but she also didn't let it define the story she told herself about what she was building. Harlan had opened a door. She had walked through it. Every step after that was hers, the stumbles and the progress both, and she needed them to be. One evening about a year after that train station night, she was closing up the kitchen after a long event, wiping down counters, her feet aching in the good way that means you actually did something, and she found herself thinking about that $10. How she'd handed it over without really deciding to. How it had felt like nothing at the time because she hadn't done it for a reason. She'd done it because it was the next right thing and she could see it clearly, and so she did it. She thought about all the nights she'd sat at that kitchen table running numbers that didn't add up, all the mornings she'd gotten up and done it anyway, all the time she'd told Isla things were fine when fine was a generous word for what they actually were. She turned off the kitchen lights and walked out to the van and sat in the driver's seat for a minute before starting the engine. Sunday Table had 3 events booked for the coming weekend. She had people depending on her now, which was terrifying and also the best feeling she had ever had in her professional life. She started the van. She had a daughter to get home to and a menu to finalize and not one single reason to sit still.